Hello, I am Megan, and this is Battle Royale with Cheese, the website where you can get all of your TV and film news, reviews and trailers. Beetlejuice is the sequel to Beetlejuice. After a family tragedy, the Dietz family are forced to return back to Winter River, where they are confronted with an old enemy, and adventures in the afterlife continue on. So yes, that was a very vague plot, but that was probably the best I could give you, actually, with what happens in the film. I also apologise, I've changed the shading on my lighting just very quickly to make me look less ghost-like. I guess it would go with the theming really though, wouldn't it? But this was the best I could actually do with comparison with what happens in the actual film itself. And it was a good sequel, but it definitely has its problems. I quite enjoyed it, but I definitely had problems with it. It has its flaws, and a lot of them actually I'm not going to mention until the end of the video. So I will say there is going to be a couple of spoilers in this video. Once again, don't worry, I will give a spoiler warning beforehand. That will be at the end of the video though. So if you want to stick around for a spoiler-free review, don't worry, won't spoil it just yet. So the returning cast are great. Catherine O'Hara returns as Delia Dietz, the mother of Lydia Dietz, who is once again played by Winona Ryder, who is much older now and is haunted by the events of the first film and the presence of Beetlejuice. And with her character especially, I do appreciate that the sequel did point out that Lydia is traumatised by the events of the first film. She is haunted by them, and it has essentially followed her whole life, and I do really appreciate that. She now works as a TV psychical ghost hunter, which is very on brand for her, but it does create problems, let's say, especially in her family life. And with Catherine O'Hara, it makes sense that she has moved on to do more modern art, more digital art, and yeah, is still sticking to artwork, but has moved away from her sculptures that we knew her from in the first film. And both of them are really, really good. They're fantastic. They slip right back into the roles of Delia and Lydia. And that was something that I was never really worried about. I always knew that they were going to be great, but actually seeing this confirmation on screen, yeah, it was really good, and they were fantastic. Michael Keaton also returns as the titular character, and yeah, once again, he's having a lot of fun with this really sleazy, awful character. I'm not going to swear, but this really sleazy, awful character who is having fun with the torment and the mischief that he's causing. And he, once again, slips right back into the character as well. It's like 30 years has not even happened. And he was fantastic. He was one of the highlights of the film next to another character who's a new character in this sequel. And yeah, he was great. He was like a joy to watch on screen. And then there's Astrid, Lydia's daughter, who is played by Jenna Ortega. And again, she's fantastic. She's great. I really, really like her. It's a very Wednesday Addams type performance, but she's good at that role, and she's great in this. So even though it does feel a bit typecast for her, she's good in those roles. So actually it really fits well with her, and it really, really suits her acting style. She's clearly sticking with what she knows. She's clearly sticking with these really gothic, again, another Tim Burton project. And it's something that I do appreciate, and it's something that she's good at. And she was a joy to watch here. And then the other highlight actually is William Dafoe, who plays Wolf Jackson, a dead action star pretending to be a detective on a particular case. Not going to mention it, but on a particular case. And he was another highlight as well. He was actually great. And you could tell that he had fun with this role as this character who still thought he was an action star and still thought that he was really great at it. But it's all these 80s and 90s like cheesy tropes and cliches. But it was really fun. It was really, really fun. I also forgot to mention another returning person to the crew is Danny Elfman, who does the music again. And I mean, yeah, you can't really have a Tim Burton film without Danny Elfman. You really can't. And the music is fantastic once again. It really felt like 30 years hadn't really passed in that regard. The look, the acting, the overall aesthetic of the film. Yeah, it really felt like 30 years had not gone by since the last film. And in that, I really, really appreciate that. It felt like a Beetlejuice sequel. Something I also appreciated is that stop motion is also once again used. So, stop motion was used in the original Beetlejuice for a couple of scenes, mainly for the sandworms. And it's, again, something I really appreciate. They use it for humour, for a humorous situation. And they use it for, once again, the sandworms. You kind of have to, I feel like. But it's something that I really appreciate. You know, Tim Burton and Henry Selick, they're keeping that genre alive, as well as Del Toro with the Pinocchio film. But these filmmakers are keeping that genre alive when not a lot of filmmakers are using stop motion, especially in these big budget films and these big releases. So it's something that I do really like because I love stop motion. I think it's amazing and it's a really skilled craft and skilled genre to have in the film industry. So I do appreciate the stop motion was used. They didn't just rely on CGI. I don't know if there was a lot of CGI in this actually. There was a lot of practical effects and a lot of costumes I could see as well. And I'll always appreciate practical effects and stop motion more than CGI itself. I think CGI can be good, but I don't think it's something that should be overused. I think practical effects are also fantastic and should be used more. Okay, so I've kind of said all of my spoiler-free stuff in this review. I am going to be talking about spoilers now, because they are all criticisms. However, I can't talk about them without spoiling some of the film. I'm not going to spoil everything, but it's just a couple of points that I had problems with. But from this point onwards, I will play, as usual, a little clip or a picture, and then we'll go into spoilers. So, here is the spoiler section. Okay, so this particular bit, I admittedly don't know if it's in the trailers. I haven't actually watched the trailers too much for this because I didn't want to spoil myself too much. So I don't know if Dolores is actually in the trailer. She's played by Monica Bellucci, and to be fair, she's really, really great. She's really creepy as this stitched up, almost looking like Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas. The initial scene where she puts herself back together and staples herself back together was great, but it really reminded me of like Sally from Nightmare Before Christmas. But it was a really cool design of the way that they handle the stitch lines and the staple lines all across her face and her arms and her legs. It was really, really cool. She's supposed to be the ex-girlfriend of Beetlejuice and the one who killed him. My problem is that it's a really interesting setup, and I feel like she was supposed to be the big bad of the film, next to obviously the titular demon. But she's not really used. A lot of the time the film forgets that she's there, and this was the initial problem I had with the film. The film is an hour and 45 minutes long, and it both feels like this film is overstuffed with subplots, but also it feels like the longest film ever. It's enjoyable, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot going on that didn't really need to be there. So Monica Bellucci, even though she was great, her character was not needed. And actually the way that they get rid of her and get her out of the film by the end was very, very rushed. There's another subplot involving a boy called Jeremy, and to be fair, I feel like he was sort of semi-important because it was a way for Lydia to get Beetlejuice out into the real world. But at the same time, the way that he's got rid of in the film and the way that they get rid of him, that was very rushed. It really felt like they wanted to do all of these things because I don't know if there's going to be a third film. I don't think there should be a third film, but I don't think there's going to be a planned third film. But that is the problem. They wanted to do all these different ideas and just shove them into this one film. And then it really felt like they got to the end and was like, oh no, we need to tie up all the loose ends, we need to like resolve everything, so they just rushed it at the end. And I definitely felt myself thinking, this feels very busy when it shouldn't be. This should be a very simple thing to do. Either have Lydia and Beetlejuice have their conflict, or have Dolores and Beetlejuice have their conflict. Don't have all these other conflicts going on at the same time. Plus, Catherine O'Hara's character, Delia, dies. And yes, we're in the spoiler section, so I am going to talk about this as well. And that's the moment where I was like, okay, there was so much going on already. I think there was about 2 or 3 other subplots going on at the same time at this point. And I was just like, there's too much happening. She doesn't need to die. You don't need to have her to die, because her death actually kind of solves no purpose. I think they felt like they just needed a send-off for some of these characters. Again, because I don't think there's going to be a planned 3rd film. So it really felt like, okay, we need to wrap up this stuff. We need to resolve some things. And yeah, it just didn't really work for me. And then finally, the film felt like it ended about 3 times. I did at one point check my phone just to check the time, because I was like, this feels like the longest thing ever. But I know that it's not even 2 hours long. So we must be coming near to the end at some point, but I don't know what the resolution's going to be, what's going on. And then, yeah, it just felt like it was ending like 3 times. So whenever I thought, okay, well, the film's going now. Nope, we've got something else going on. Okay, the film's going now. Okay, no, but never mind. So it definitely has its problems. I enjoyed it. Will I watch it again? Probably not, to be honest. I probably won't do, but I am glad that I watched it, because it was enjoyable, but it definitely has its problems. But that was my review of Beetlejuice. I was Megan, this is Battle Royale with Cheese, and all I'm going to say is Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice.